It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation.
Welcome to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we're so glad you've chosen to join us once again. Derek and I are history buffs. We love immersing ourselves in history, reading diaries and books about, autobiographies and biographies, and I've been doing that since I was a kid. How about you?
I was always fascinated with how we got to where we are, family history, world history, history of the ancient Near East. I've done a lot of reading on the history of the Amorites, which is really influential on biblical understanding.
And if you want to know how the Amorites were able to tell what the time was, then he will tell you how they built their sundials.
Yeah. That's my dad's joke. Ask Derek for the time, he tells you how to build a watch.
But I'm the same way. I get excited about a topic and I want to talk about it and talk about it.
But before we dive in, we want to remind you, please get our mobile app, our free app, because that is a way to guarantee you get all of our content delivered right to you, right to your smartphone or tablet. And we've also got versions for Apple TV and Roku. There's a Fire TV version that is in the works. The developers are telling us that it's the bottleneck now is Amazon approving things.
Yeah.
But the bottom line here is that it gets around the gatekeepers of big tech and social media. So if on, say, my podcast, I say something that they find offensive, they won't suddenly cut us off and you'll be wondering where we are. So go to gilberthouse.org/app. Take advantage of that. Download that to your smartphone or tablet. iOS, Android, Amazon, Kindle Fire. We've got apps for all of those.
Speaking of our website, you may have noticed a few weeks ago that website disappeared.
Yeah.
It was because we were migrating from one server to another. We have 12 websites.
Yeah. We needed to upgrade the server because the old server, same company, same hosting company.
We wore it out.
Yeah, I think we did.
You guys went to our website too many times.
Constantly running up against the limits of the processors, but also the software running the servers was reaching end of life, so we needed to get rid of that and upgrade. But it took about a week for the migration, and then dealing with other minor issues that pop up. It's like, now the security certificate's
And we were at a conference while it was all going.
Right.
But
we're all back online.
I bring that up because we are back online, as you well know. But also, because we were down for a while, you weren't able to go to our store, and we appreciate the fact that you do. So we are going to extend the June-July special through the end of August. Because those of you who wanted to get the special, you went there and thought they're gone.
Yeah.
And then you might think, well, have they been hacked? Are they safe?
Yeah. Getting the error message said this website is not private. It is not secure. Well, that's all been fixed. It's all fine.
We had security certificates all along. It was just not showing up. But yes, we've extended the special, and it's a great special. So, Derek will put a little banner or something showing, he's so good at editing, showing what it is, so you'll get to see. But please go to gilberthouse.org/store for all the info on that. I told you last week that I would give you some information about the lead up. Now, you're going to be surprised by this. I know I was. Beginning in 1805, in Algeria, as many as 500 Jews were massacred. Let that sink in. As many as 500 Jews were massacred in Algeria. In 1811, the head of the Jewish community in Algiers was decapitated. In 1815, 8 Jews were burned in Algiers. It goes on and on. Algiers, Turks from Algiers attack Constantine, massacre and pillage Jewish homes, and abduct 17 young Jewish girls whom they bring to their commander. Sounds very much like what's going on in Gaza, doesn't it? That continued. 1819, series of anti-Jewish riots in Germany spread to several neighborhood countries, Denmark, Latvia, Bohemia. They were called the Hep Hep riots, and it was a rallying cry against Jews in Germany. This was 100 years before Hitler and his buddies.
Hep hep?
Yeah, that was what they were shouting. Hep hep, hep hep. So when you say hip hip hooray, think about that.
That's what I was thinking.
Yep. 1827, Jews from Russia were told they had to serve in the military service. So that was something that was not liked very much. Jewish children were forced into working. They were encouraged to baptize the children and put them in other homes. Some of these children were stolen from their Jewish homes. In Canada, a new law requiring an oath saying, quote, "On my faith as a Christian," was now applied to all Jews. Persian Jews in Iran attacked by a mob in 1830. And it goes on and on. 1831, more riots in Lower Canada. 1832, a law was passed guaranteeing Jews the same political freedoms in Canada, same freedoms as Christians. So oddly enough, as much as you and I want to say Canada is not a very good place to live because they are so restrictive, at least they offered some freedom to Jews in the early 19th century. Goes on and on, on and on. I would challenge you to go and take a look. 1834, Jewish hero and martyr Saul Hachel is publicly decapitated at the age of 17 in Morocco because she refused to convert to Islam. The Tsar of Russia, Nicholas I, in 1835, started to oppress. This was the beginning of the pogroms in Russia. Druze, believe it or not, in 1838 attacked some Jews. The Jews' attack on Safed was a plunder of the Jewish community of Safed by the local Druze during the Druze Revolt.
Okay.
Safed is a northern district of Israel, I think.
Right, it is.
Let's see.
And the Druze were rebelling against the Ottomans.
They were.
Yeah.
The Druze have not really liked anybody
Yeah.
because they're sort of on their own. But today's Druze serve in the Israeli military.
Yeah.
Proudly.
They're loyal citizens of whatever state they belong to. They're basically scattered between Lebanon, Israel, and Syria. And that's led to some problems with the cross-border conflict between Israel and Syria because you've got Druze with relatives on the other side of the border.
Yes.
So anyway.
Jews of Hamadan. I'm not sure where that is. I'd have to look that up, forgive me. The Jews of Hamadan are accused of mocking the Tatziyat ceremonies for Imam Hussein. This is in 1860, at the time that the U.S. was still in a civil war.
That's in Iran, or Persia at the time.
Yeah. Several of the Jews are fined and some have their ears and noses cut off. In 1862, this is going to surprise you, General Grant issues General Order Number 11, ordering all Jews out of his military district. That's in 1862.
You know, at that same time, the Secretary of State for the Confederate States was Judah Benjamin, a Jew.
That's right. That's right. And when was Disraeli Prime Minister in Great Britain?
I will have to look that up.
It was about that time, I think.
I will find out and report back in a moment.
Thank you. 1863, a Jew in Hamadan is lynched by a Muslim mob. 1864, 500 Moroccan Jews are massacred in Marrakesh and Fez.
Benjamin Disraeli, the Earl of Beaconsfield, served as prime minister between 1874 and 1880.
Oh, okay, so a little earlier than
Preceded and succeeded by
later.
Gladstone.
Good old Gladstone, he was in there over and over again. 1866, Jews of Balfourish are forcibly converted to Islam. Simon Bierfeld is believed to be the first Jew hanged in the United States. That's in 1868. He is Bierfeld and his African-American clerk, Lawrence Bowman, were apprehended in Bierfeld's store in Franklin, Tennessee. Fatally shot by a group of masked men believed to belong to the KKK. And of course, then Bierfeld himself was hanged. Tunisian Jews in 1869 are killed in a pogrom as the Arabs mobbed them and looted their homes. They burned synagogues. It goes on and on through the 70s, on into the 80s. I mean, there are things taking place that make many of us Christians look really, really bad. So it isn't only the Turks, it isn't only the Arabs, it is also Christians that were taking place, that were getting involved in these. And then we get to the Dreyfus affair. France was becoming highly anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic in the 60s and 70s. And in the 1890s, let me go and look this up, the military had become rabidly anti-Semitic. And Alfred Dreyfus was a proud soldier, proud officer with the French army. And what he didn't know is that his fellow officers had decided they were going to get rid of him by making it look as if Dreyfus had been a traitor. A cleaning woman discovered a document in a waste paper bin that had sensitive information on it. She then handed it over to an officer who ostensibly put it into a private file, and I'll get to the file in a minute, that made it look as if only Dreyfus could have been the one who handed this sensitive information to the enemy, to the Russians, I think, with the ones he was handing it to. I'll clarify that in a minute on the break and then come back. Or Derek will look it up. But Dreyfus was arrested. He was put on trial. It was a major show trial. It was the trial of the century in France. Everyone wanted to go there. Everyone hated him. They would spit on him in the streets. He was considered the most evil man in France. There was never any substantive evidence offered by the prosecution.
It was the Germans, by the way, that he supposedly transmitted the information to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The secret file was never made public. It was said by the prosecution that we have all the evidence we need, and it is too sensitive to show in public. And so somehow they got past that, saying, no, we can't reveal this. Reminds me of Prince Harry's visa trial. We would love to show you what his visa application said, but it's too sensitive. So we can't even show it to the judge. Well, finally the judge got a hold of it, but it reminds me of that. Well, Dreyfus was found guilty and sent to Devil's Island.
Yeah. And it turned out that the actual culprit was a fellow named Ferdinand Esterhazy.
Yes, Esterhazy.
Esterhazy.
Actually the one, not Dreyfus. But Dreyfus was a Jew.
Right.
So they wanted him out. Well, now we get to Theodor Herzl, who had been sent by the newspaper, a Jewish newspaper in Vienna, to be the French correspondent the correspondent in France. It was a plum position. Herzl, he had a law background, he had a journalism background, he was a writer, he was very well educated, came from a good family, and he went down there and was convinced by the prosecution that Dreyfus was guilty, even though it was a fellow Jew. He believed everything that they presented was legit. And when he discovered that it had been a setup, he was so angry because Herzl watched as France became a boiling cauldron of anti-Semitism.
Yeah. It wasn't they were just angry at Dreyfus. They
Right.
blamed all of the Jews for what Dreyfus allegedly did. And by the way, Dreyfus was eventually exonerated, and he served in the French military all through World War I.
Yes.
And retired from the French military in 1935.
Yes.
But he did spend 5 years on Devil's Island.
Yeah,
So.
funny thing is, I do think it's pronounced Dreyfus, but ironically, it's Richard Dreyfus.
Yes.
Who wanted to be, he put the film together. There was a film about it a few years ago. And I can't remember if he played Dreyfus or if he played the prosecutor or a lawyer. Anyway, he did help produce it. So yeah, interesting enough that this is what ignited that fire within Theodor Herzl to see an innocent man sent to Devil's Island and then exonerated, praise the Lord. But Herzl decided at that time he needed to find a way to carve out a new land in Palestine. It was called Palestine at the time. And so he started going to people with money and to rabbis who had influence. We need to take a break?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Take a break, but we'll continue with, again, the lead up to why Israel even exists today. And again, our belief that all of this was God working through flawed and failing humans to accomplish what he had promised the Jewish people more than 2,000 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah, more unraveling revelation ahead. Giants, gods, dragons, they're all real. We may not see them with our natural eyes, but their handiwork is evident in what's happening in the world around us, the spiritual warfare taking place.
It is so true. It's obvious in Israel, but worldwide. Historically, we've seen this happen. And we want you to get excited about the Old Testament and the New and the giants, gods, and dragons within it, because your kids need this information. So do you.
Yes. We're living in prophetic times. Help make sense of it with our special offer through July. Our book, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, which takes a fresh look at end times prophecy. My book's Bad Moon Rising, about the spiritual forces behind Islam, and Last Clash of the Titans, the overlap between what we were told is Greek mythology and the Bible, and our DVD based on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. All of this, an $80 value for just $45 plus shipping and handling, now through July, only at our online store, gilberthouse.org/store. Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we're so glad that you join us every week. And please tell your friends about this program. And, if you watch this on YouTube, then why not subscribe?
Yeah, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, but then, again, just get our app to make sure that we never get canceled.
Because the day will come when we do. Let's face it.
Yep. We're in their sandbox, their rules. But
yeah, I get that. I really do. Also, if you love Israel and you want to go, we are going there next March with Tim Alberino and Doug Van Dorn and
Dr. Judd Burton.
Dr. Judd Burton. Come on. Tim Alberino, Judd Burton, Doug Van Dorn. It's a dream team.
Yeah, this will be like a rolling conference through the Holy Land, God willing. We are watching the situation on the ground there with what may be an imminent, in fact, by the time you're watching this, there may be fighting on the ground in southern Lebanon, but we pray that things are peaceful by then, because many of the sites we like to visit are right up against the border
north,
with
yes.
Syria and Lebanon, because that's where some very significant spiritual things have taken place in history. Jesus' declaration of his divinity right there at Caesarea Philippi, the Grotto of Pan. So more information available, and the latest information. If we have to change our schedule, we'll put it there at gilberthouse.org/travel. We're also considering the possibility of another solidarity mission to Israel in the fall.
When we got back from the solidarity mission this spring, I looked at you and I said, let's go back. I immediately wanted to go back because the reception was incredible. I mean, we got hugs, we got tearful, smiles, and so many of the people there that asked us who we are, why we were there, why are you Americans here? We just told them we love them.
Yeah.
And we wanted to actually witness with our own eyes what was going on.
I think a lot of the Israelis are in shock at the world's reaction to them, because
Yes.
they were attacked by people whom they had, in some cases, and this is known from items found on some of the Hamas terrorists who were killed on October 7th, detailed maps of the communities that they were attacking, which came from intelligence collected by workers who had been granted permits to cross into Israel to work for Israelis.
Sometimes they'd been inside the Jews' homes. They knew it
Doing
well.
maintenance, doing yard work, doing basically anything you would hire a contractor to do. And they were taking intelligence back to Hamas as part of that, and used that then to slaughter 1,200 Israelis on October 7th. So the Israelis, seeing that, are kind of in shock. Most recent survey I saw of Israelis, 70% of Israel is Jewish, and 80% of Israeli Jews want Hamas just destroyed. This cannot happen again. And yet the world is looking at Israel and saying, okay, well, you're committing war crimes and genocide, and so you need to stop. And the Israelis are like, wait, what?
And so you've got college students who are chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free. That's a genocidal statement.
Yeah.
That's saying you want to erase all the Israelis.
Right. And the original Arabic language actually says, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be Arab.
Yes.
So it's ethnic cleansing.
Exactly
But the
what it
irony
is.
here is when they're chanting free, free Palestine, that's the last thing Hamas wants. They don't want a free Palestine. They want a theocracy where you either follow Sharia or you're
died.
out.
Just the things I was talking about, the Jews who were being
Right.
killed in the 19th century because they would not convert. They would not, it wasn't any longer pay the fee.
Right.
And you get to, no, it was you convert or die.
Exactly. And this, again, corresponds to what, going back further, the rise of Wahhabism in the late 18th, early 19th centuries.
Yes.
In Arabia and in North Africa. This, I think, is showing that there was a spirit that was rising, because this, as you say, it crosses ethnic and religious boundaries. It wasn't just the Arabs or the Turks. It was not just Muslims. It was Christians who were also persecuting Jews in
Yes.
all of these countries, from the United States to the Middle East.
And you had a lot of, there was warfare going on also between the Catholics and the Lutherans. Still, Austria was Catholic, Prussia was Lutheran, and I tell you, and Poland was Catholic. Russia was Orthodox.
Right.
So Russia was coming against Poland, saying that they weren't practicing the right kind of, of Catholicism or whatever you want to call it. The Catholics were going after the Protestants. There was all of this infighting, and it was, of course, that's one of the reasons that the Ottomans thought in the first place, hey, we can take them. Now's a good time to take them, because they saw a weakness, just like the Sauds saw a weakness in the 19th.
In the Turks. And
exactly.
they could rise up and throw off the Ottoman
Exactly.
yoke. Right.
Well, as we get to Theodor Herzl, he has seen all of the anti-Semitism rise. He knows history. He understands human failings, and he understands politics. He tries to go to bankers and rabbis and anyone with influence and tell his story. He wrote a book called Alt Neuland. It's a novel, and it was about the establishment of a new Israel in the land. And the novel is written in a way that the main character is honestly surprised when it happens. He doesn't expect it to happen, but it happens because he is lovingly generous with a beggar on the street. Yeah, because he does a good deed and then goes off to just live his own life far away from the world on an island with a rich man. He's sort of acting as a companion. Because of his generosity, this young boy grows up and takes the generous offering that this man gives him in the novel and uses that as the seed to plant the city, this new city. Alt Neuland is just old new land. And when it was translated into English, the title was made to be Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv, which was a city that Ezekiel had been in, where he lived in the Chaldean Empire, ruled by Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon. So yeah, that's where the name Tel Aviv comes from. It's actually biblical from the prophet Ezekiel.
You know, I don't think that we're going to have time to get into all of the various things that led up to 1948. But if you've been reading the Red Wing Saga, then you can guess why I'm doing so much studying on this time period, watching films, reading biographies, reading books, reading stuff that Herzl's written, trying to figure out exactly what steps took place, to the best of my ability to find it, leading up to that moment in 1948 when the votes were cast and finally.
Well, maybe next week we can do a little bit more, say, 20th century history, starting with the Balfour Declaration.
I think so, and that's why I want to get up to that, because the Herzl movement finally ended in this idea of Great Britain wanting to help set up a new land, a refuge for the Jewish people. Great Britain had become, the leaders in Great Britain had become very involved in the Zion Congress. And the Zionists, they get a bad rap now. It's this idea that a whole bunch of rich people got together and said, we're going to establish a country and we're going to run the world from there.
Yeah, and we're going to...
That's what the devil wants you to believe.
Yeah.
That the Lord used all sorts of people to accomplish his ends. This was prophesied long ago, Old Testament, prophesied that this would happen. That throne is forever. That throne in Jerusalem is forever. It's the Davidic covenant, and it is not dependent upon anything that a human being does. God promised it, God will keep his promise. And so he uses people that we would consider good guys and bad guys.
And it's done through the most unlikely, as we see over and over through Scripture, so that no one can say, oh, it's because that guy is so strong or talented or handsome or powerful that this happened. God had nothing to do with it. No, I think when you see all of the moving parts that were in play, all of the competing interests that had to align, and sometimes in ways that we might find distasteful for this to happen, you got to say, wow, it's even more of a miracle than I realized that Israel even exists today. For us Americans, the history is not really very comfortable because we realize we're not the good guys in the story.
No, we're really not. Well, more on that next week. We don't want you to miss that. Also, I'll give you a hint about what's going to be happening in the next book from the Red Wing Saga. Red Wing.
Well, I know that a lot of people I met this past weekend waiting. When's book 9 coming out?
I'm working on it, and we'll tell you more about that next week.
Thank you for watching. This is Unraveling Revelation.
Unraveling Revelation is a viewer-supported outreach of Gilbert House Ministries. Follow us online at unravelingrevelation.tv and gilberthouse.org. That's where you'll find our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us through our websites or drop us a line at P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633.